2026. We've got a few apologies for this evening, Councillor Yateman and Councillor Sandelson. I think we've still got Councillor Clarkson and Councillor Mundy is running late, so they will be joining us hopefully very shortly. In terms of declarations of interest for any of tonight's agenda items, anyone want to declare anything? No declarations of interest, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, any amends or additions to the minutes from last time, which was the 22nd of September? Okay, in which case then, are we all happy to approve the minutes of the 22nd of September 25 as a true and accurate record? Yeah, fantastic. Addresses by members of the public on any of the matters for this agenda. We aren't aware of any, so we'll move on. So then the substantive item, first of all, is the review of the cumulative impact assessment and special saturation policy, which we had discussed at the previous meeting. And I think we've got the officers to present the report. You're not here to present anything.
I am.
You are? Okay, yes. Thank you. So we'll go to Jonathan for presenting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So before you is the report to reaffirm the decision that the committee took back in on the 22nd of September 2025. The reason why it is back to you is obviously, as you all know, we took some advice from Council last year, and they said that the CIA and SSP would be a decision for the committee to take, and the recommendation following that meeting was to go forward to Council. So it is brought back tonight for members to take a decision if it reaffirms the decision is made back in September last year. So a lot of the reasonings as to why are listed within the report, but as I said, the first thing we need to do is obviously decide, does the committee want to agree with this decision it took back last year?
Thank you very much. So do we have any questions before we open up for discussion? Any questions for Jonathan on that? Okay, James and then Lewis. Thank you.
From my understanding of it, the other reason this was brought back is because last time we were told that we could only consider the licensing objectives when discussing the SSP, and that's not actually true. So just to clarify, when we're upcoming the upcoming discussion, upcoming vote, we don't just consider the licensing objectives when discussing the SSP, right?
So just to recap, Councillor Taylor, the question for our legal services is whether we can consider more than just the licensing objectives in the vote. Is that what you're clarifying?
Yeah, that's
it's an evidence-based decision. So you consider the evidence in relation to the licensing objectives. So it's whether you're convinced by the evidence that there is a need for a special saturation policy.
I have a question, Chair.
Yes, Councillor
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if we had any updated, any data updated. I know at the September meeting, we were looking at the numbers of applications that had been submitted within the SSP was 52 and 51 of those had been approved. And I wondered if in the previous licensing period, and I wonder if there was any updated data from including the months from September to now about the number of new applications within the SSP.
Thank you, Councillor Mudderman. We have the officers in front of us here and I'm seeing a nod of heads. So from the licensing team, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So since the last committee in September, we've had 14 new premises licenses issued. 8 of them have been in the SSP areas. 1 was granted by a subcommittee, 9 were granted with agreed conditions, and 4 were granted as applied for, so none of them were refused. We had 1 minor variation, we've had 5 full variations, 3 of which were in the SSP areas as well, all of which were granted as applied for or with agreed conditions. And we've currently got 5 applications that are pending.
Thank you. I have a further supplementary question.
Please, Councillor Mudderman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Are the officers able to provide any data about the change in the number of applications, new applications within the SSP in the period, the same period whilst we had the SSP, and then the same period since we lost the SSP. Do we have any comparative figures for that?
No, the only other figures I have are from when the SSP was in place the previous 3 years, which are already in the report.
Do we have any further questions? Councillor Madiman.
Just finally, sorry, thank you for that. But in your view, in the officer's view, has there been an uptake in the number of applications following the ending of the SSP?
I think it's been a steady amount of applications. We haven't received as many variations, for example, as we were expecting with the SSP not being in place. So yeah, it's been steady.
Thank you. And Councillor Ortino, please.
Yeah, of the ones you mentioned, quite a lot of them had conditions attached. Have they generally been the conditions that the police have asked to put on them? And has there been any sort of resistance from the applicant to the police putting on conditions?
Yes, TVP agreed conditions, and the conversations that have taken place between the applicants and TVP have been positive. So there hasn't been any kickbacks or anything like that.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, maybe a question from my side, if I may. With these additional licenses that have been applied for in the special saturation policy area, has that then increased the density of the number of license holders who are in that area, or is it that people are reapplying after other previously licensed premises have stopped operating? What's the kind of net balance once you take those into account, please?
So of the 14 new premises applications that we've received since September, 8 of them have been in the city centre, none have been in East Oxford, and the others have been not in the SSP areas, if that helps.
Okay, Councillor Upton and then Councillor Ortino. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the advantages of having the SSP appeared to be that it meant you got better and earlier engagement from the people applying for them. Has that disappeared with the 14 that you've had since? I'm trying to get a measure. I mean, we heard that 51 out of 52 were approved even with the SSP, but the good thing was that you'd had early engagement. They thought that they may have been had better conditions and people thought more about it. I mean, the applicants thought more about how they were going to make sure they weren't a nuisance. Yeah, do you think that's been less of a case since we lost the SSP for those 14? Thanks.
No, there's still early engagement, and we still encourage applicants to have those pre-consultation conversations with the responsible authorities before they submit an application. So yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ortino, please.
Yeah, have we got any evidence from the police that crime related to these establishments has gone up in those 2 areas since we didn't have a saturation policy? Or is there any evidence about an increase in other sort of complaints related to those licensed premises since we didn't have the policy, which is about a year now, isn't it?
No. So we've seen an increase in complaints about SIA door staff, but they're referred to the SIA. And we get weekly reports from TVP, but I wouldn't say there's been an increase since the SSP's not been in place.
Okay. Councillor Taylor, please. Thank you.
It sort of feels like this question should be asked. Has there been any real difference since we got rid of the SSP?
There isn't any data that we've gathered to confirm or deny that.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
So yeah, we could do an exercise and ask for data and do a sort of proper analysis of the impact. I think it would be the only way to kind of answer that question properly. I think there hasn't been an expansion of the nighttime economy that we had at the levels kind of pre-COVID and post-COVID. So the kind of like for like trend analysis would probably indicate that there's less crime at the moment. The question for us is about if it does expand again, how do we, protect public safety? So I think for a full answer, we'd need to go back and revisit that data. But at the moment, we haven't had a spike or a peak.
I think I just wanted to check, Councillor Upton, did you have your own hand before? No? Yeah, not again. Okay, so we've got, Councillor Ligo and then Councillor Attino. Thank you.
Some of the questions have been asked and it says, and also we're looking at NOTS review. I mean, in 6 months, a year's time, should there be any differences, so we can always bring this back to the committee anyway. But as it stands, we're saying there's no data, no complaints really, as it stands.
So Councillor Attino had another one, then Councillor Roman, and then Councillor Raw, please.
Yeah, can you just expand on the complaints, increased complaints about door staff? I imagine that the police are requiring more door staff. Is that proportionate to the increase in complaints? And what has been the response of the establishments when there's been complaints about their door staff? Are they responding well to that and changing them?
We wouldn't have the full data on that. They've been referred to the SIA as they are the enforcing a body for SIA registered door staff. So it would be between the SIA, the police and the premises to deal with. That's not something that would fall under the licensing authority's remit, unfortunately. It would just be referred to the correct body.
Just come back, have you any sense what their response might be? What sort of things how would they?
I wouldn't know how they do their enforcement.
Thank you. And so Councillor Roman and then Councillor Raw.
Thank you, Chair. So it just looked pretty evident since when we had the SSP to now, there hasn't been an influx of loads of applications. It's been pretty steady. And one of the licensing objectives is to protect the public more than anything else. So we've not had a decline or an upturn in anything. So therefore, having, in the officer's opinion, having the extra layer, would that be good as per our licensing objectives?
So officer opinion. So anything to do with the licensing objectives around public safety and the protection of children, it's useful to have tools at your disposal. Clearly, those tools will be given to us by this committee, and it would be your objective assessment of the data to determine whether you think that an SSP is something that would help those licensing objectives. Sometimes it's quite tricky when you look at pre-COVID and where the hospitality industry is very, very different in the city to now. So quite often the data tells a different story. So I wouldn't like to give a personal opinion about an SSP, but there are definite reasons why it was introduced into legislation. And I think it's down to this committee to see whether that's relevant. You do have to think about the city centre. You also have to think about East Oxford and maybe the movement of the nighttime economy and where that may go. And then you might want to consider that LGR is on its way and a whole conversation about licensing will happen sort of post-July anyway. So I wouldn't like to give a personal opinion, but in terms of protecting the public, it's a tool that was brought into legislation for us to consider. And we have used it to galvanise conversation, particularly with less responsible licensees in the past. I hope that answers your question as objectively as I can.
I think Councillor Roman has a follow-up, so if we take that before going to Councillor Raw. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you for that. So in essence, you're saying that the extra layer is good, so we can achieve our objectives as best as possible, but not having the SSP hasn't hindered any businesses, and it hasn't been a massive upturn. So in my opinion then, having the extra layer is a good thing. Extra layer of protection for the public and children is a good thing. So would you agree with that? That the more protection that we have without hindering the nighttime economy must be a good thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Not must be, I'm asking for your opinion.
Thank you. If you may, and if you can, which you may not be able to provide an opinion, just to clarify. Thank you.
When the SSP first came in, it certainly had an impact. There was applications for establishments containing 900 people, no food, no drink, just basically vertical drinking establishments. And it was used to deny that application. The police made a presentation. I think the relationship between the council and the licensing fraternity in the city is quite mature, and so those conversations do happen. We've got some long established people running, you know, responsibly. They're running pubs and clubs in the city, so its impact may be less than it was initially, but it still has its benefits. And when we have new people in, it can force people to the table to have a conversation that they may not have wanted to do. I can't cite any cases on that. I wouldn't want to, but it certainly does have a benefit. I'll leave it there. Otherwise, I stray into personal opinions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rule, and then I think Councillor Taylor, I also have a question as well. So, Councillor.
Thank you. I was just going to, I think you may have just answered it in speaking, but to clarify that in the year that's passed, the officer recommendations as put in the paper sort of still stand as true. We're reading it now today, and also the other consultees, such as the police, the fire brigade, those quite strong sentiments still stand even after a year has passed, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think you nodded your head, didn't you? But yeah, great. So I think just for the record, there was an affirmation there. Councillor Taylor, then please.
I think I'll hold it till we get to the debate stage.
Thank you. So my question is that hypothetically, we obviously haven't had the debate yet, but a discussion around the reaffirmation of the decision. But if we were to reaffirm the decision from September not to renew the cumulative impact assessments and special saturation policy, can licensing still commission a future cumulative impact assessment to assess like this 1 year period without that special saturation policy to help with any kind of reassessment of whether it is needed again in the future? And would we have to recommend that now for a future step in? Yeah, thank you.
I might hand that to Ali if she wants to comment on that.
I think the officers can decide to run a cumulative impact assessment. If that's something that the committee during the debate feel they wish, then you can ask the officers to conduct that. So you can do it either way. The officers could decide that a cumulative impact assessment was reassessed. I was going to reaffirm that because it's evidence-based, you do need that cumulative impact assessment in order to be the evidence that you look at to see whether distribution of premises is persuading you that you need to do more over and above in order to uphold the 4 objectives. It is safety of the public, but just to remind everybody, it's crime and disorder. That's why we take the evidence of the police very seriously. It's public safety, it's public nuisance, and it's protection of children from harm. And it's whether or not the evidence suggests to you as individual members that the distribution of premises is such as to warrant special action by the authority in the form of an SSP to deal with problems, exceptional problems, where there is this distribution of premises. There is a lot of talk of a SSP, but actually it's 2 relating to 2 separate areas that have distinct characteristics, distinct evidence, just to remind the members of that. There is always, when we're considering applications or variations for applications, we are always scrutinising what the individual premises is doing, but the special saturation policy forces you to look at the additional impact that might be occurring in these 2 areas that have distinct characteristics.
Thank you. Any additional questions at this stage? Question rather than debate, right? Yeah. Okay, question from.
I don't understand the map. So could you explain why the map's always the same? And for instance, why the Black Swan in Crown Street isn't in the area, or the Star in Rectory Road isn't in the area? What would be the difference on the impact on those local communities for them to be treated differently from a licensing perspective? And similarly, why in the centre of town, nothing in Broad Street or St Giles or Jericho and Little Clarendon Street? I'm worried, I don't understand why some bits are in, some bits are out. Some of the bits that are out are more residential than the bits that are in. I thought it had a bigger impact on the community. And in terms of the routes that people would follow to get to and from those places, exactly the same routes they'd follow. What would be the scope for changing the areas? If we brought it in, is it we just stuck with that area? Because that strikes me as that would make unfair competition between businesses.
Okay, over to the officers just to clarify that question.
Um, So this is all evidence-based, it's all evidence-led. So we use a range of data, police crime data, whatever we can get our hands on, CCTV, etc. So we formulate the boundary around where the data allows us to do so. So when you do veer off the Cowley Road, there is very, very little data around the kind of nighttime economy between that 6 p.m, 6 a.m. kind of window. So it does kind of focus us down. There are some areas as well that you can't introduce licensed premises into because they're neighbourhoods, for example. So we wouldn't put a boundary around those. Do take your point about the movement of people, but the vast majority of incidents and of offences happen within those boundaries rather than outside of them. Jericho, fewer licensed premises, fewer number of incidents. We hadn't included it in the SSP, so it won't be in your map, but we are definitely data-driven, data-led.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions before we turn to debate? Okay, Councillor Mundy.
Just a question of clarification, just for our committee, just to confirm, I think it is that potential licence holders and those wanting to amend their licence need to take consideration of the cumulative impact assessment and the SSP where their premises would be, but it is ultimately up to the licensing committee's discretion as to how they respond to those applications based on that policy, and therefore we're still, as a committee and the future members of the committee, have the discretion to actually use our own response to that policy to ensure that both the reasons why that policy is in place are followed, but also that we are encouraging the nighttime economy, just to sort of confirm that, really.
Yes, that's right. On a case-by-case basis, the committee would look at each application in front of them on that basis. There's no blanket requirement to do something because of the SSP. So, yeah, absolutely, discretion of the committee.
Thank you. All right, so I think at this point, since we've had lots of questions for the officers, we have the recommendation before us around this question whether we want to reaffirm the decision of September, which was not to renew the CIA and saturation policy. So on the basis of that, we were basically saying that we weren't, the committee, although I know there was difference of opinion, was not overall convinced that the CIA led to a need to bring in the special saturation policy. So I think that was what had been agreed last time, obviously subject to some debate and some disagreement. But to now open debate, do we want to reaffirm that decision today, or are we wanting to not reaffirm it and open up to beyond that debate whether we should retain the special saturation policy? So Councillor Taylor, please.
So there was a sort of a suggestion earlier there that we renew the cumulative impact assessment because it seems reasonable for us to be monitoring the situation, but that we do not renew the SSP, or either of the two SSPs, I should say. And then we come back, we revisit it when we have a lot more data and when we can see a lot more of what's happened. Edward, I know you missed the start of the meeting, but a lot of the discussion was essentially either nothing's really changed, or there hasn't been enough time to say whether or not enough's changed. So I think, given the situation and given what we've discussed there, we should take that decision and then ask what would probably be the next licensing committee, because it would be the licensing committee after the May elections, to then, because then they'd have had a year without the SSP to revisit the situation and see what the result is.
Okay, sorry. Anyone else like to debate the question of whether we're reaffirming the September decision or whether we want to essentially not retain, reaffirm it and retain the special saturation policy? Yeah, oh, sorry. It's already expired. Or bring it, yeah, it's expired. So, yeah, are we reaffirming? Thank you. Yeah, just clarify, Ali, thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify that it's expired. There is no special saturation policy in existence. So if you don't reaffirm your decision tonight, it would be a question of whether or not, looking at the evidence that's before you that hasn't been refreshed, but such as it is attached to the report that you've all had, whether or not that, when you consider that, makes you consider that you should bring in a special saturation policy.
Thank you, Ali. So that's just to clarify the process.
And
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Can I just ask another clarifying? So I understand what you've just said. There isn't one in place at the moment. If we were minded to, is the committee able to vote to re-adopt one tonight, or would that have to come to a new meeting?
Jonathan, please.
So I think it would probably be best to come to a new meeting, but as officers have also explained, there was also local government reorganisation to review as well, which is so I think, as I said at the outset, the first decision really for the committee to make tonight is, do they agree with the decision they took back in September? And then obviously once we kind of got over that hurdle, then obviously follow-ups can be worked out.
Okay, anyone else like to, Councillor Clarkson, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would want to reaffirm the decision that was taken in September. I mean, I think that when the SSP originally came in, it was a good thing, but I think the city was and the nighttime economy was in a very, very different place to what it is now. So it served its purpose, but I don't think there is a need for it now. And I don't think that we should impose restrictions unless there is a really clear reason to do so. I think that the public are rightly sceptical about councils that impose restrictions when there's no real good ground. So I think we should stick with the decision that's taken in September.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay, we've got Councillor Raw and Councillor Omer. I don't know who had your hand up first, so whoever, yeah. Okay.
So I think that we should not reaffirm our decision, and actually with what Jonathan said about it would have to come to another meeting, so it will come probably after May. So therefore, we would have had a year's worth of data that James was alluding to in any case. And I think that I think that as per last time, I think we're forgetting that our onus is on the public safety and not about the businesses or how things have changed. It's just about the safety of, in my opinion, safety of the residents, of children, and protecting that. And since we've had that 14 or whatever cases we've had, it's not been a massive upturn. So that says, to my mind, with the limited data, there's been no massive restriction previously with the SSP in place. And that's now brought loads of applications forward. It's been steady, as the officers have said. So therefore, in my opinion, that extra layer of safety for public is the most, is paramount over everything else. So therefore, I agree with James in a way, that I know that he's saying reaffirm the thing, but me and James are getting to the same point that after May, if we have it again, we'll have a year's worth of data and we can see it. So if we take the decision now to accept our decision from previously, then that won't happen in after May. That'll take a long time. So I think that we should revisit our decision.
Thank you. Any other, Rosie? Yeah, the councillor.
Thank you. So I regrettably was not here for the last meeting, but would have been minded to vote for the proposal as endorsed by, recommended by officers and the statutory or consultees, if you like, based on the fact that it seems to me to be an enabling policy to help the council ensure it is meeting its help us meet our licensing objectives rather than being restrictive on businesses. And given having read the minutes and watched a bit of the YouTube recording to have like heard the concerns raised by councillors, what I feel like I'm hearing today is that those concerns have not arisen, and therefore there is not a deep need to remove something that probably was doing well, was needed initially, and has continued to build a positive culture towards early engagement on this.
I think we've got Councillor Ottino and Councillor Jupp and Councillor Mudderman in that order, please. Thank you.
Just want to remind Council, we haven't had this policy for a year. So when they're saying nothing's gone wrong without the policy. So for that reason, we don't need to change our decision. I mean, I think we should always come back and review things with evidence. I don't want us to go back on our decision before I think we'll be bringing in something that is unfair. The maps are not fair. They treat businesses in some roads completely different from businesses on other roads. Of course, if you go to the Star and Retro Road, you either walk up and down Cowley Road or St Clements. And if you behave antisocially because you've been in the Star, the impacts on those roads. Ditto the Black Swan is literally about, I don't know, 30 metres from the Cowley Road. Also, central town. So yeah, I'm happy to see future evidence, but it's got to be much broader areas of evidence so that we're not make it easier for licenses to be granted or extended in some places, which are literally meters away from those that aren't. So come back with a report at any time with the data about crime, the data about complaints, but don't unfairly discriminate between businesses.
Okay, Councillor Jupp, please.
Thank you. I have a couple of points to make, one of which is that we're perfectly entitled to have regard to other factors than solely the licensing objectives. This is a policy decision, and the legal advice that was received by council was that we're able to take other factors into account, including the policies of the political parties we're elected as members of, or our own personal view of what's best for the city, business considerations for the nighttime economy, whatever factors we might have, as long as we take a balanced view and we're open-minded about the issue at hand. On the specific on the CIA, as it is, I can only echo what Councillor Ottino has just said. The data is old. To my mind, it's out of date. There are some incomprehensible emissions from the city centre map as it stands. I don't fundamentally believe the policy is fit for purpose, but quite apart from that, I also think that if you think we should have an SSP that's based on cumulative impact assessment, then at least make the cumulative impact assessment consistent and reflective of what the actual challenges on the ground are, as it were. I'll further echo what Councillor Taylor and Councillor Clarkson have said as to the necessity of waiting for a little bit longer without an SSP in place to see what the effect is. I mean, I'll echo particularly what Councillor Clarkson said about having unnecessary restrictions, having unnecessary policies, having anything that disrupts the consistency in the way that licensing decisions are taken, which is what the SSP does by design. I don't think that's good for efficiency, and I don't think it's good for the way in which we take the decisions as councillors on those subcommittees either. The final thing, and this is a question, but I'm not entirely sure who best to direct it at. I think the SSPs as they existed, the two SSPs as they existed before they were got rid of, I think distinct arguments can be made in favour or against each of those. And I wanted to ask if it would be possible to vote on each of those separately, because I think the East Oxford situation is substantially different to the one in the city centre. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's given rise to a question. I think it's maybe a process clarification as well as anything else around whether, if we were not to reaffirm this decision, we could vote separately on a special saturation policy for the two zones separately. Could you clarify? Yes, we can. So we've got clarification on that, but that would be contingent on whatever the first vote is, which is around the reaffirmation of the decision at the last meeting. Because if we were voting on this, which is not to review the CIA and saturation policy, which is what we're being asked, the question we're being asked to answer now, then it wouldn't lead to the next question, which is then the two separate special saturation policies. Councillor Taylor, yes, please.
Yeah, and so another clarifying question that's based off of that is that, and I asked you this earlier, whether or not we can only consider the licensing objectives, because when you answered my question earlier, you said yes, we can only consider the licensing objectives with all of the evidence based on licensing objectives, but the legal advice that we've received and that Theo spoke about there says the opposite. So I kind of feel like we're being told two different things.
At the beginning, I said that it's an evidence-based decision is how I replied to you. And that's my opinion legally, is that the most important thing is the evidence that's before you, whether or not there is additional need to have a special saturation in order to achieve the licensing objectives. Beyond that, you can, as Mr. Councillor Jupp just said, it's a policy decision. So you may think that there's other things that feed into the evidence that you're looking at. But what I would guard against as members is to ignore the evidence and, because it's a policy decision, look at other factors, but not look at the evidence itself. The guidance is always the same, that it's an evidence-based decision. And therefore you must look at the evidence. You can bring other factors in, but it's evidence-based. So you couldn't put it to one side because you feel that there's another factor that is overriding. You would be ignoring the licensing objectives. You can't ignore the licensing objectives, but you can feed in with other aspects because it's a policy. Does that, you're looking like that maybe doesn't answer your question?
I think we had Councillor Mudderman, and were there any other hands that I've missed? Okay, Councillor Mundy, so thank you, Councillor Mudderman.
Thank you, Chair. On evidence, we've heard that there has been no increase in the number of applications in the past year, and it is almost a year since we didn't have an SSP, so we do almost have a year's data. Granted, if we wait till after May, we'll have a little bit more, but we do almost have a year's data. And there has been no increase in the number of applications. And I think from that, we can deduce that actually that the SSP is not something that has a negative impact on the nighttime economy, which I think some of the colleagues are trying to argue. But actually, I don't think it does have a negative impact on the nighttime economy, because we've seen no difference, in the number of applications since we didn't have it. In fact, the only data point that we do have that officers have given us, the only significant change of data is a negative one, in that there have been an increase in complaints against doormen. Whether that's related or not, it's hard to tell. However, it is the only data point that we have that has changed, and in a negative way. Officers have also told us that when the SSP first came in, it was very useful, because we obviously pre-COVID, we were in a very different place, and that now we have a lot of stable, responsible licence holders for whom the SSP is not necessarily needed, because they have, they've been operating for a long time, we're in partnership with them, and they operate in a sensible and responsible way. However, they have told us that it is a useful tool for engaging with new applicants who might not necessarily want to come, want to be as responsible as those long-standing ones that we have. And given that the evidence so far has shown us over the almost 1 year that we have not had an SSP, that actually it is not having we're not seeing a huge increase in applications, and therefore I deduce from that the SSP is not a negative thing for the nighttime economy. Then why would we want to lose that tool that officers have told us is useful for engaging with new applicants who are not necessarily as responsible as the many that we have, the long-term ones? So I do disagree with the decision that we made at the last committee, and I would like to see us not reaffirm that decision. And I understand from the advice that we've had from officers that actually would mean that the SSP remains not in place because it is not in place, and that and so that actually not be a change until May, when we would have perhaps a little bit more data in order to come back and make another decision. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Mudderman. We've got Councillor Mundy. I want to come in as well, and Councillor Taylor's got a point to make, and then I think Councillor Upton. Thank you.
Yeah, just briefly, because I very much support what Councillor Mudderman's just said. You know, really, we're here to be focusing on the licensing objectives. Obviously, we are here to think about the vibrancy of the nighttime economy, but I struggle to see the argument when the nighttime economy has not suddenly started to grow massively while this policy hasn't been in place. So, you know, I think that this policy is there to support a healthy and vibrant and a nighttime economy that ensures that the licensing objectives are being followed. So I encourage colleagues to rethink this afresh. Don't just think that you're stuck in your same ways as you had last time. Feel free to change your minds if you were originally against this policy. And also, you know, obviously, look, you know, I think it was actually raised that we can have political ideas about this as well. I would discourage people, I think, to really see this in a very political way. This is very much about our legal obligations. It's very much about our obligations as licensing committee members and to the safety of the public and the safety of children and women. So please consider this, colleagues, and I'm going to be voting to not reaffirm our decision to take away the CIA.
Thank you. So I'd like to just take the chair's hat off for a second and just make a comment which we're being asked to also look at what the evidence is before us in the cumulative impact assessment. And whilst, you know, that was presented to us earlier on this year, the evidence in that did say that there was a cumulative impact of a concentration in these two areas of licensed premises. And whilst I don't live within the cumulative impact of the special saturation policy zone, I do know, as a resident who lives in Oxford near an area with lots of licensed premises, you do experience a lot of negative impacts from that. And I think we can't ignore the evidence that the police have put to us and other statutory entities in the previous meeting, and also you know, the officer's advice that it is a useful tool. So I think in that respect, I would be also suggesting not to reaffirm the decision, but as Councillor Mudderman has expressed, and we've heard also even from Councillor Taylor, that actually we would be bringing this back to next meeting, where perhaps then more cumulative impact data could be put forward, and then because we would need to reaffirm any future special saturation policy at a future meeting, not today. So I guess that is my view on the matter, and that we're about upholding the licensing objectives, which is around the protection of public, crime and nuisance, and these things are as it currently stands, without the special saturation policy, we are taking each individual licence on the merits of itself, and we're not allowed to therefore look at that cumulative impact in putting on specific and additional conditions which address some of that in either the city centre or in East Oxford, which, if we have this in our back pocket to be able to do so, then in the event that there are irresponsible potential applicants, we have that to be able to point to data that shows what that cumulative impact is, and that can strengthen the conditions that we're then able to put on the individual applicants that we wouldn't be able to do if we were looking at each applicant by itself without looking at other ones around it. So that's my view. I know that we've got Councillor Upton and Councillor Taylor. Thank you. So maybe over to, and then Councillor Ligo. So yeah. And then Councillor Oman.
Thank you. This is something I am really genuinely very torn about, because I can see that this policy has been in the past extremely useful. It's a very useful, has been a very useful tool to have. Yeah, for protecting, Councillor Mundy mentioned women and girls, but I also think young men. I think, you know, the chance of getting beaten up on the way home is very high for a young man as well. You know, it's been a very useful tool to have. But at the same time, listening to Councillor Clarkson's arguments about we shouldn't be having policies that we don't need is also a very powerful argument. So I think I'm coming down in favour of reconfirming our policy to get rid of it, but I would like us to come back and look at it again, because if it starts to bring up issues, you know, if we start to feel, if officers start telling us that actually it would be better if we had an SSP again, then I would like to have that option ready to go very quickly.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Taylor, Councillor Ligo, and now Councillor Mudderman. Okay, thank you.
So we all seem to be saying different things and then arriving at the same conclusion. And the last two committee meetings went on very, very late. And so to save us a little bit of time, I'd like to formally propose that we, for the meantime, reaffirm our decision. And then at the next meeting, once we have a year's worth of data after the next election, we come back and reconsider the policy. Is that reasonable?
In terms of process, because you've moved the motion, that we have to then see if there a seconder. We've got Councillor Ligo seconding. Okay, so can we have a vote then? All those in favour of reaffirming the decision of the 22nd?
Oh, sorry. May I just, I'm sorry to be pedantic on this as well. Anybody comes in, and it's not a target in you, Ed, but anybody comes in late into the meeting, they're still allowed to vote, even though we've started the meeting. It's not, yeah, there's no constitution. Just, yeah, okay, just clarification. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so can all of those in favour of reaffirming the decision of the 22nd of September to not renew the cumulative impact assessment and saturation policy covering the city centre and East Oxford areas? Thank you.
And then specifically to revisit it at the next meeting after the election, because I think that's what we
need to just clarify that. That would need to be seconded as a specific and separate point.
Yeah, and we'll do a separate vote.
We'll have a separate vote for that. Thank you. Okay, so first vote is the first point that we've made. Yeah. So all those in favour of the reaffirming decision of 22nd of September 25 to not renew the cumulative impact assessment and saturation policy covering the city centre and East Oxford areas. Full stop. Okay, so that is 7 people who voted in favour of reaffirming the decision. All those against reaffirming. That is 6. So that has fallen. I think we've got everyone in the room. There's no abstentions, is there? No. Okay. So then we have, as a committee, reaffirmed the decision of the 22nd of September. I take from the debate before that we would like to, as a group, move a motion around bringing back a cumulative impact assessment for the next policy meeting of this committee, which would be post-May. So do we have a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Upton. Can you just say that again, please? To bring a cumulative, to review, to bring a cumulative impact assessment to the next meeting to discuss. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've just moved the motion, so I think we have to finish this now. So, and we'd had a seconder, so.
Recommendation to be pedantic motion.
Pardon, it's a recommendation. Yeah. It's a recommendation. Okay, so this is a recommendation. All those in favour of that, please raise their hand. Okay. All those against bringing cumulative impact assessment to the next meeting? 2. And all those abstaining, please? 2. Okay, so the recommendation carries that a cumulative impact assessment would be brought to the next policy meeting of this group to discuss again and review the data essentially. Okay, any further comments on this, please?
Well, if we're allowed to just add things to the agenda, can we also make a recommendation that the area is expanded to include, in terms of the Cowley Road, the whole of East Oxford and the whole of the city centre and Joker? Are we allowed to do that?
I just clarify, because I think that this is what is done anyway, but just to clarify.
What we'll do is just take officers to take that away.
Yeah.
And my recommendation on it, because you close the item.
Okay.
It can be noted and then.
Okay, so the geographic scope of this will be noted based on the comments raised.
Also, the comment that Councillor Fupp made, sorry, which I don't think it answered, can they be seen as separate items rather than one item? I think that's what you were requesting. I don't think that got answered. If we could have one discussion about the city centre and another discussion about East Oxford rather than bunging them all together.
Okay, yeah, okay, we can note that and the item will discuss the cumulative impact assessment of all of the city and data, and so these two areas can be within that discussion taken separately based on the reviewing of the data that will be presented before us. Councillor Remen, comment?
I'll pick up a point that Simon said, and the officer said that I think he was talking about the Star and the Black Swan. I think the officer said that the Star was in a residential area anyway, so it's not impacted. It has separate rules, so it'd be more difficult to get licensed premises there anyway. Is that how I read it? Is that what you said?
In terms of the number of establishments in that neighbourhood, it's difficult, so planning reasons to
yeah. So it might be difficult. It might be difficult to expand the map for that reason.
Okay, so just the officers will come back with a cumulative impact assessment, and that anyway shows everywhere in Oxford within the ring road, within our authorities' boundaries, and on the basis of the data, then we can have an open discussion about the actual areas where there's a need for this. I think that's noted, and your comments are noted about the potential needs for multiple zones. So we'll take that forward to the next meeting, and we'll close this agenda item and move on. Thank you. Thank you, officers. So then let's move on to agenda item number 7, which is the licence fees and charges for this forthcoming financial year, which are before you. And we are being asked to recommend to the council to approve the licence fees and charges per the Licensing Act and Gambling Act. Yeah, I've got the officers who are before us. Would you like to do some introductory remarks or just answer any questions, just to clarify? Okay, over to you then, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek agreement on the Licensing and Gambling Acts Committee licensing fees and charges for the 2026-2027 financial year. All fees under the Licensing Act are set by statute and are therefore not able to be amended. Fees under the Gambling Act are either set by statute and not able to be amended or set to the statutory maximum. It is proposed that for this financial year, no substantial variation to the current fees and charges is made to provide financial stability to licence holders in the present economic climate. The only minor fee increases proposed fall within the miscellaneous charges and can be found at Appendix 1 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for officers about these charges? No? Okay, so are we then, Councillor Ligo's arms just raised, so.
Proposing that I agree, then move to the votes.
Yeah. So do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Jupp. Okay, so please, all those in favour of supporting these licence fees, please. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. So I think that concludes that agenda item. Thank you for your time today, licensing officers. I appreciate that. We move to the dates of the future meeting. The next one will be the 27th of May 2026 at 6 o'clock. Just to say, some of you may or may not be here at the next meeting, depending on what happens, and also which which allocation which allocations we get for committees. So thank you for your service. We appreciate all your efforts, and yeah, we'll move on to the next meeting. So thank you. Yeah, so at 7 o'clock, if you can reconvene for the next, the General Purpose Licensing Committee. Thank you.
Right, I think we're all back in the room, so we will start the meeting if we're all ready. Okay, do we have any apologies for absence? The same as before. Okay, so if we can minute those, thank you. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No, no declarations of interest. The minutes of the previous meeting, is everybody happy that they are a true and fair record? All agreed? Yes, I'm seeing no objections, so minutes agreed as a true and fair record. And now we come to public addresses, and I understand that we do have a speaker. If you'd like to come forward. Welcome. If you'd like to introduce yourself and then read out your statement.
Good evening, committee. My name is Sajjad Khan. I represent the Hackney Carriage Trade of Oxford, Coulter. And I'd like to start off by saying thank you to everyone. Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity. Our members acknowledge and express appreciation for Oxford City licensing proposal not to increase licensing fee this year. At a time when many sectors are facing rising operational costs, this decision is welcome and provides some relief to those of us working hard to sustain our livelihoods in the Hackney carriage trade. There are issues that impact us and vital that I must explain here. Firstly, with the substantial increase in the number of private hire vehicles licensed by Oxford City Council and are now operating in Oxford due to the introduction of Uber, many within our trade had expected the licensing fees would actually be reduced. The logic behind this expectation is simple. A larger licensed fleet should, in principle, ease the financial burden on the licensing department. For the first time ever, we have witnessed private hire license plate numbers go beyond the figure of 1,000. The exact number of private hire vehicles licensed in Oxford is currently unknown. Over the past few months, a significant amount of private hire vehicles are being licensed in Oxford. Secondly, as you will be aware, our trade continues to struggle immensely due to a severe and prolonged lack of work. The combined impact of changing travel patterns, closure of nightclubs, and deceitful competition from Uber, and the overall decline in footfall across the city has left many drivers facing financial hardship. A reduction in licensing fees would therefore have provided meaningful support at a time when it is needed the most. Thirdly, and equally important, is the fact that Oxford City licensing fee structure, in comparison with South Oxfordshire Council, is considerably higher, especially for electric vehicles, which is counterintuitive, given the Council's stated climate goals. The difference is large enough to impact driver finances. We pay significantly higher for our drivers and vehicle licence fees. For a yearly vehicle licence fee in Oxford, the owners of a standard Hackney carriage diesel pay £472 a year, and the LEVC owners, electric cab owners that is, pay £354 a year. For a 3 years driver's licence, which is the combined taxi badge, in Oxford, drivers pay £452.40 a year. In comparison with South Oxfordshire, their vehicle licence, the owners of a standard taxi pay £389, which is £83 less than in Oxford, and the owners of a zero-emission capable wheelchair accessible taxi pay £110, which is £244 less than what we are paying. For a 3-year driver's licence in South Oxfordshire, drivers pay £395, which is £57.40 less than Oxford. This doesn't include the additional costs we pay towards the safeguarding and disability awareness course every 3 years, the fee for the DBS update service and the taxi medical. I respectfully ask the committee to take these concerns into account and to consider whether further support for the Hackney carriage trade may be possible, whether through fee adjustments, targeted relief, or alternative measures that recognise the critical role we play in providing a safe and reliable public transport service for Oxford's residents and visitors. On a final point, Chair, it is vital that the committee are also made aware of the fact that owners of the LEVC electric taxis in Oxford are facing considerable challenges sourcing essential mechanical components, many of which have been on back order for months. Unsurprisingly, these delays are now directly affecting their ability to present their taxi for compliance testing at the ODS on Marsh Road, creating further disruption and operational difficulties. there must be a collective agreement between this committee, the licensing department, and the ODS to ensure that no LEVC cab is taken off the road unreasonably due to the ongoing shortage of mechanical components. This is particularly important where a vehicle remains roadworthy but does not present any safety risk. Thank you for your time, and I would welcome the opportunity to engage further on these matters and contribute to any further discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that address. And I understand from officers that we can now invite officers to respond to that either now or when we come to item 8, which this relates to. So I think I'd prefer officers to respond to this when we're about to discuss the item, if that's okay. Is that all right? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So yeah, please go back to your seat. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Okay, we're now on item 5, councillor addresses, and there are none. So that takes us up to item 6, the miscellaneous licensing update report about smoke-free pavement licensing. So if officers would like to come up and present the report. And members of the committee will remember this is something we requested. Thank you. Sorry, officers, are you ready to present?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah. Well, good evening, Chair and members of the General Purposes Licensing Committee. You'll remember back in February 2025, the committee requested a report from us outlining the feasibility of increasing the restrictions to smoking in pavement licensed areas in Oxford. And this report that I'm about to deliver and is contained within your pack is the response to that request. To go over a little bit of the background, the Business and Planning Act 2020, as amended by the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, is the necessary piece of legislation that governs pavement licensing. And it's Section 5 of that Act that allows local authorities to impose conditions on licenses. And these include those that are related to smoking. Whilst there is some discretion given to local authorities, national conditions are provided which we must have regard to when we place conditions on licenses. And those conditions are the ones which we currently adhere to. The current conditions require us to provide reasonable provision for both smoking and non-smoking seating in our licensed pavement areas. They require clear signage and separation of those areas. That is our current standard. That's considered to be a proportionate policy by the national guidance, and it currently works within current resources. We receive few complaints, even fewer during the winter months, about people smoking outside. There are several challenges to introducing 100% smoke-free conditions on our pavement licenses, which I've outlined in this report. And some of the processes on the way to making that so. There isn't a statutory requirement to consult when introducing pavement license conditions or policies. However, best practice would indicate that we should do so, because any policy changes we make must demonstrate reasonable justification and be supported by evidence, and therefore be defensible, especially in something that would introduce a significant change to the licence, in a restrictive change, that is, to a licence. Any consultation should involve the relevant stakeholders, which should include all of our current holders of pavement licences as a minimum, and also the smoke-free officers at the local authority. As we can see, there's we'd also look to consult with public health bodies as well. Now, if we look more widely in terms of benchmarking, I've put in the report the local authorities that currently have adopted a full smoke-free pavement licence condition. It's not a long list, there aren't very many of them. And we can see that some of the larger authorities there that have that, including Manchester, some of the Teesside authorities. And and just before we're going further, the other policy that we were asked to provide a feasibility review on was whether it could be done on a daytime only basis. Could we limit the hours? And yes, theoretically we can do that. We could put a time restriction on smoking. It's not something that any other local authority does. And I suspect with good reason, because it would lead to quite a complex enforcement environment. And there'd be a strong risk of confusion. You'd have to get the message out to the public. I think it would create enforcement challenges that would be difficult to overcome. Implementation of such a condition would be a challenge, in as much as we can't alter pavement licenses during the currency of those licenses. So we can't change conditions, we have to wait for them to expire, and then we can amend them upon renewal. Alternatively, the holders can, with consent, we can alter their conditions if they consent to it at the time. It's possible that that would be a difficult and rather long way around of going about it. Are there challenges and risks to it? Yes, there are. The public health pressures is something that as an authority we do support. And it's supported widely. Smoking and health ash, as you can see in the report, have the aim to make seating entirely smoke-free. They say it's simple, easy to implement and enforce, is what they say. They're not a regulatory authority though, so I have my reservations. If smoking is not prohibited, they say pavement areas will not become family-friendly spaces, is what Ash says. And they also state that 59 to 60% of adults in England support banning smoking in outdoor seating areas of restaurants, pubs and cafes. The Local Government Association also says 100% smoke-free in pavement licence areas would provide a level playing field for hospitality venues across the country. So this is a quote from their organisation. And it would ensure outdoor drinking and dining is a family-friendly environment. Now, I suspect we should treat this quote with a little bit of understanding that I suspect it was made before hospitality venues were struck out of the act that would have made them smoke-free. Because it doesn't consider private beer gardens, it doesn't consider private areas of the highway. So whilst it's in there, and that is what they say, if you look it up, I think it's probably slightly out of date. They say Local Government Association also say it would make the legislation clearer for businesses and easier for licensing authorities to enforce. Some challenges that we've identified in introducing such a thing is there are some competing interests. The conditions must be defensible, so we have to bring the justification forward to introducing this as a condition, perhaps. The ash ones and would justify that, but also we'd need the results of a consultation exercise to provide that defensibility. I think probably the biggest obstacle that presents itself is resource allocation. For any regulatory regime to be worth its salt, there must be an equal ability to enforce conditions, especially an absolute restriction on what was previously held to be something that could be done. And is part of a business's offer to the public as well. And so I think we would require an additional enforcement capacity in order to do work and provide this to be a regime that could work if it's going to have any meaning. If it's going to be effective, I think I put in the report. And of course, it must be applied universally, but it will be a patchwork because our outdoor spaces are not all in public ownership and do not all require a pavement license. So there will be some businesses that are able to provide outdoor smoking areas and some businesses that are not, if it were to be introduced. And so I think in terms of the alternative options, the tobacco and vapes bill, which is the bit of legislation I was reaching for earlier, has specifically excluded hospitality venues. So there won't be any, there's no scheduled legislation that we can look forward to that would provide such a ban. Most local authorities, in fact the vast majority, retain a mixed smoking and non-smoking policy, which is our current position. Although it is left to the discretion of the local authority in their area, of course. And so I think our options are to either begin the process of introducing a 100% smoking ban in the pavement licence areas, or to maintain the position we currently have. Now, the conclusion that I've come to in the report is that a full ban would require active monitoring and enforcement, and we don't have the additional staffing or budget to provide that service at this time. Implementing such a condition without the capacity to enforce it does risk inconsistency. So people who complain the most will see some enforcement action. People who don't complain won't, because there won't be an inspection capacity dedicated to this role. Which might lead to the potential for challenge for us as an authority. Upcoming local government reorganisation, I hesitate to mention it, but I think it's a factor that is worth bringing in because it is a fact. Will place pressure on resources, and the introduction of new policy will go better if we have stability in the organisational working. As yet, we don't know what our resource allocation will be 2 years hence, when we'll be bringing in this policy. It might be that we have more resource available to us, which would be nice. It might be that we have less. And in any case, there's the potential for the duplication of work or a political desire to align policies across whatever authority it is that we end up being incorporated into. The current policy we have meets our national requirements, meets the needs of the premises we serve. Whether or not it meets the needs of the public, we can't say, I suppose, without a consultation exercise. What I would say is that we receive very few complaints about smoking. I had a look, and I think we've received about 2 over the course of the last year. And that wasn't to do with smoking so much as to do with people not putting the right signage up. That there is low demonstrable demand for it from the public in coming into our team at the moment. And yeah, that concludes my report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So do we have any questions for officers following that report? Councillor Attino.
Yeah, I thought when we discussed this before that we made it clear that we wanted some feedback from organisations like Turning Point and mental health charities before we progress any further, and I don't see that here. I mean, addiction is a illness itself, and it's often related to trauma and poor mental health. I'm worried that we will further marginalise groups, which include the most marginalised in our society, if we start saying they can't sit outside cafes. And I'm also not clear. So if you had a pub that doesn't have a pavement licence and people smoke outside a pub next to a cafe that does have a pavement licence, you'd have people smoking outside the pub right next to. So it would be very hard to implement in that sort of way.
Through your chair, yes, councillor, that is absolutely correct. I apologise, I didn't pick up that you'd wanted input from Turning Point, so I didn't seek it. I remember the points being made about addiction, though being a relevant factor. Certainly, I would agree that that is a factor. The situation you outline, if people step outside of a pub and smoke, there is no control on that. And yes, you could very well, if the people step out over the boundary line of the licensed pavement license area, they could smoke there just as well and legally and lawfully as they could not on the other side of that boundary. So you are correct.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I think Councillor Miles and then.
Yeah. I have a question for the officer around what the process would be for surveying and doing a consultation on this. I do have some comments for debate, but shall I hold those for a second?
Yes, please. Let's start with questions.
The process for surveying is we would look to the team we have here that do consultation exercises. We would engage them to do that. But certainly the stakeholders we would look to engage with would be, as I said, the licensed holders themselves. So we'd look at what the proposed economic impact would be for them, and what they think how they think that might affect their audience profile, because it might have an effect on that as it drives different sections of their customers away, or attracts different sections of their custom. And we would engage with the councillors, and I think then I'd rely on the expertise of our consultation team to draw up a standard list when you're putting together any new policy.
Thank you. I think I've got Councillor Upton and then Councillor Ligo. Is that right? Yeah.
Could you give me a definition of a hospitality venue? Because I kind of assumed that restaurants were hospitality venues. So I need to know which things are specifically excluded from this legislation and which things are in. That's one. The second one, in paragraph 4, I read it as it says the national conditions require reasonable provision for smoke-free seating and allowing smoking seating. Does that mean we have to make reasonable provision for allowing smoking seating? Because if we went 100% smoke-free, that would not be allowing any smoking seating. So could you just clarify that? Thank you. And then finally, we've been in the previous discussions worried about having consistency between businesses. In this case, if we did bring in 100% for that would only be for the new licenses granted. So how much turnover is there in this business? How often do these licenses get renewed? I.e., how long would it be before all of the existing licenses who have 50% smoking were all standardised to being 100% if we did choose to go down this route? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair, the first question, what is a hospitality venue? Now, it will be defined in the Tobacco and Vapes Act, which I don't know the definition off by hand, but I know that it includes everywhere that serves food and drink, effectively, would be a hospitality venue. So if you can go in there and buy food and drink, it would be a hospitality venue. So cafes, restaurants, pubs, bars, and also theatres and cinemas.
Sorry, so those are all excluded from, maybe I've got the legislation.
Yes, yes. So they're all excluded from the Tobacco and Vapes Bill, which looks to ban smoking entirely on the premises of those places.
Okay, so therefore we do have the flexibility to allow them to have some smoking on the.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes.
Thanks, I got it the wrong way around, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And the next question on smoking, the National Condition, which must make reasonable provision for smoke-free seating and allowing smoking seating. And so the national condition set by the government when they passed down this legislation to us says that we should have a condition that allows some smoking to take place, but we have discretion to change that. It's not set to a point where we can't change it. We have discretion to override the national conditions, providing we have the justification to do so, and decide that that's wrong and we don't want there to be a provision for people who smoke.
Okay, thank you.
And the third part, how long the licenses last for 2 years. And so the bulk of our renewals happen just because of the way the legislative reform was brought in August or September. As it happens, it's this year that many of them do renew. So unless it was brought in before August and we completed a consultation exercise and brought in a new policy before then, which might be a very tight timescale, and I don't think it's achievable. But we'd be looking at 2028, I think, before it can be brought in.
Thank you. Councillor Lygo.
Points have been made, so no questions.
Okay. Any more questions? Councillor Raw.
Thank you. I was just going to ask about the resourcing to understand what is currently involved in monitoring and enforcing our pavement licences, and what extra resource would be required to enforce this particular condition on pavement licences. When you talk about, the arrangement of extra resource, what are we talking here when we're talking about how much extra resource would be needed?
Use your microphone.
Sorry about that. In the payment licence team, there's me and one other officer, a licensing officer, and I'm the senior licensing officer. And we cover a broad number of licenses, which includes pavement licensing as a part of that. So our portfolio of licenses includes a few other things. So we'll be looking at street trading as well. We'll be looking at animal welfare. We'll be looking at tattooing and electrolysis and that kind of acupuncture activity. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so there would be, you'd need to have a consideration as to how we would go about monitoring those payment licenses. We currently have 104 payment licenses, so it's quite a substantial task. That's going from having 3 in 2020. So you can see how this has snowballed up to this point. It's a good thing. It's providing us with, I think, 678 outside seats that we never had before. So there would certainly be an impact on looking at that monitoring.
Thank you. Any further questions? Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Raw?
Just briefly, so it would be reasonable to consider, we're talking about possibly like an extra post, really, if your small team is already working quite across a large range, just to understand the kind of extra.
Yeah, I think we would need to consider that.
Thank you.
Any further questions for officers before we move into discussion? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you, officers. I think we'll move to discussion now. Okay. Councillor Miles.
Thank you. So the question is whether there is justification, and I would argue that there is justification to bring in 100% smoke-free terraces, pavement licences. And I think obviously today what we're hearing is it's not going to be an immediate step. We have to do some surveying and we can gauge public opinion. But I do think this is a direction of travel for various reasons. One, and not least, I mean, there's the public health reason. So actually, when we talk about benefits to businesses and to society, we've got to look at what are the public health benefits that are going to bring to our county. And we actually have a policy, which is a county policy, but for smoke-free Oxfordshire, which I think we as the City Council have actually endorsed, I think. And so that is a smoke-free Oxfordshire by 2030. And so I think there's very clear justification of that in terms of policy alignment. Secondly, I think smoke travels, as we've heard. But, you know, if you go as a family or anyone actually, but particularly with children, to sit in a pavement cafe and you've already purchased your food and drinks and you're sitting there and then someone comes and sits next to you who is then smoking, your children are then and you are exposed to that smoke. And to be honest, you know, we're balancing the rights of people to be able to smoke, but also the rights to protect people's health. And I think in those circumstances, I would argue for protecting the health of those. And if people are addicted, we've heard about this problem with addiction, maybe we do need a nudge to provide that support. So there's less temptation for them to be doing that if they can't do it on the terrace. So I think the public health benefits outweigh any of the disadvantages, and we've got clear policy direction as well. There is obviously a business case because it can attract more customers who might want to sit on those terraces if they're smoke-free. Certainly, I'd be more inclined to with my family. And then when we talk about some of the data about smoking complaints, so that's one justification we've been given as to, you know, why maybe there isn't a demand for it. I would say that, you know, very few people are necessarily going to be complaining about this, partly because they probably won't know about complaining, but just people vote with their feet and might go elsewhere to a different cafe. They're not necessarily going to be complaining about smoking in a particular location. In terms of the point around enforcement, I don't think our decisions should be guided by, oh, do we have the resources to enforce this? I mean, we need to think, well, what's the right thing to do, first of all, for public health benefits, and then, you know, we can allocate resources along the lines of the policies that we support thereafter, and rather than starting with, well, what can we afford to do, and then not do it. And then with the LGR, I think by taking the next steps towards progressing this, it means that we would then be doing the groundwork prior to the LGR, whatever the boundaries are going to be. This direction of travel is towards smoke-free Oxfordshire or Oxford, whatever the boundaries are going to be, and therefore we'll have at least done the groundwork to have any speedier implementation of any 100% smoke-free pavement cafes. Whereas if we were to delay it now, then we're just kicking this decision further down the road. So that would be my argument. So I would say that we should begin the process of a mandatory smoking ban on the pavement licences through starting with a consultation on this. So starting with the process, obviously we're not predetermining what that outcome of that survey is at this, but not slowing down this by kicking it down the road. So that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Taylor, you were next.
So Councillor Miles talked about how we should draw up a list of things and then talk about how we should fund them. That's kind of the budget, isn't it? The thing that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. Isn't that the thing that we've drawn up a list of things and decided this is what we'd like to fund? And unless anyone here is going to say otherwise, I don't think that anyone's put in a sort of budget bid that would take something out of the budget or in some way find money for an increased enforcement in this way, in the way that the officers would find would be in any way reasonable to enforce what they're asking to be done. So that's one of the reasons I don't think we should do this, in that unless you're about to tell me that, yes, actually the Liberal Democrats have put in a bid and Ed's said, yes, no, we're definitely going to do this, then I don't think we should be accepting that. And the second thing is, 2028 is when the officers here said that the implementation will actually take into effect. That's also the year the Oxford City Council is going to stop existing. And we're not going to, the unitary that comes in isn't going to be Oxford. We're not annexing the areas around us as much as we sometimes treat it like that. That they have their own opinions, and it's entirely possible that the next authority decides to go, the moment that the licensing is fully implemented, the next authority decides to do something completely different. And that doesn't make much sense to me from an LGR perspective and from a licensing perspective. So, I mean, I do agree with you that I think a consultation could be a good idea for the next authority, but otherwise I disagree, and I don't think we should be doing anything else.
Okay, Councillor Miles, I think would like to come back.
Yeah,
and then Councillor
just
Tina.
Thank you. So on the point around the budget, I mean, budget generally follows the policy, but we can't budget for greater enforcement for a policy that doesn't exist yet. So that is the first thing, because we haven't actually come up with, and what we've heard from officers today is that policy of 100% smoke-free terraces can't be adopted at tonight's meeting. What we can do is we can say we would like to start the process where this could be a policy that is adopted in the future, subject to a consultation, and so we would be starting the process. I mean, I would, in terms of the budgets that are going to be presented in a couple of weeks' time at full council, that's still a matter of debate. We haven't passed a budget, but as I say, this policy hasn't been adopted, and so an enforcement of a policy that doesn't yet exist is not going to be able to be put into the budget, and so I think that is important just to clarify. Thank you.
Councillor Attino, and then Councillor Mundy.
Yeah, I'm a non-smoker, but nearly everybody else in this room is a non-smoker too, and the sort of physical health issues are obvious to all of us, but I'm really worried about the mental health issues, and I don't think we should be going forward until we've got more information about that, more information from mental health charities like Elmore and Mind, and from Turning Point organisations dealing with addiction. There are really marginalised people in this city who are struggling with addictions for all sorts of things, but including tobacco, who are literally going around our streets picking up cigarette ends from the floor and making their own cigarettes from them and going to places where other people have stubbed out their cigarettes to get tobacco. I don't want them to be any more marginalised than they already massively are. So until we've got clear sort of information from those mental health organisations and organisations like Turning Point, I don't think we should be pushing forward, because we could end up making those people even more unhealthy by stopping them from going to areas than they already are.
Okay, I've got Councillor Mundy, and then Councillor Rawle, and also Councillor Upton, and then Councillor Miles.
So, Chair, with your permission, I have a question that's arisen from Councillor Taylor's comments. It just might be helpful, if possible. I don't know if you've got access to this information to give us now, but just to kind of, because obviously budget's been brought up as though it could be a big thing, and I can't kind of get it quite in my mind what that increase in budget would be relative to what we spend at the moment. So perhaps it would be useful to understand the current budget that we have for enforcement that falls under these miscellaneous licensing things that as such that we're looking at the moment with the pavement licenses. So the total budget for that now, and what we would anticipate being the cost of having that extra enforcement officer that you said that would be required for this particular policy.
I think I'll take that one, Councillor Mundy. I think, first of all, we need to recognise the fact that for pavement licences, there's a set amount that we can charge, and that's dictated by central government. So there is no leverage there unless they put it up universally across the nation. So then we'd have to look for some other way to cost that.
So how much are we, sorry, do you mind if I follow up, Chair? So sorry. How much is so I understand about what you're saying about the charges the charges that are being levied there. How much is the council, as in, the licensing team, how much is that costing budget-wise at the moment to enforce the licensing objectives under the miscellaneous licenses, and how much more would it cost if we had that extra officer to enforce the objectives of having no smoking in the pavement licensed areas? Thank you.
I think I understand the question. I don't know the answer. So at the moment, I wouldn't be able to give you that answer. We'd have to look at how much that would cost.
Sorry, Chair.
Last one, Councillor Mundy.
So what's your budget?
So currently for pavement licenses, our budget means that we can administrate, enforce, govern and process applications. So that's what it covers at the moment.
Okay, I'll move on. Councillor Rawle.
Thank you. I was going to speak to a few points being made in the discussion, which has been really helpful. I was just wondering, like Councillor Attino, I think it's really helpful, the comments that you've raised, but I'm wondering if seeking the advice of those organisations that you mentioned would be best done through a consultation, or would be achieved through a consultation, bringing in lots of different organisations for their expertise on this. I think it's a really fair point to be made. I kind of have some thoughts on some questions around like the thought of how this would affect like issues of isolation, and I expect that those kinds of things were raised also on indoor smoking bans, and yet that's obviously quite a sensible public health intervention that we would continue to support and not want to remove. And therefore, I'm thinking it's the same way that maybe we should be thinking about this moving forward. So that was kind of one first little point. And then the second was just on the enforcement point around the extra resource that might be required. I'm sort of wondering to what extent a policy like this might be self-enforcing because of the way in which it creates a culture with signage that people know there's a smoke-free banning, that actually in the same way as your kind of plastic-free or whatever cups, people start to self-police, and therefore actually it might not require the same element of kind of harsh, and obviously our approach isn't to be sort of harsh enforcers, it's about raising awareness and trying to create a new culture. So I'm kind of questioning to what extent it might require kind of a lot of resource, even in the realms of licensing. And then the third thing I kind of just wanted to highlight is a slight pushback on the idea that local government reorganisation should stop us as a council from moving forward anything in the next number of years. We just passed a local plan for 2045. We have to move some things forward, and doing the groundwork ahead of that, if it involves, for example, a consultation, I think is a really sensible thing to be doing in this time that can help prepare for whatever shape we end up in moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Upton. Put your mic on.
Picking up what Councillor Rule referred to in Councillor Tino's comments, I think that part of, we've said we have to have evidence for this, we need public health data and a consultation and feedback. That is when we would, I think, we'd seek the views of Turning Point, etc. So I think that would come up if we do start the process, so that would be fine. I just want to clarify a couple of other things. Councillor Taylor, I think you mentioned you thought that it can't come in until 2028, but actually I think what officers were saying was that the first ones would start, new ones would start probably in late 2026, I guess might be the earliest we could do it, and then all through 2027. There's just the very last ones would be the ones that who get renewed in 26, who won't be done until 28. Okay, so there would be a year or so when there was some discrepancy between different premises, but I think the public health benefits outweigh that. And finally, yeah, the enforcement point. Yes, obviously we're not going to have enough officer time to go and enforce that, but 90% of burglaries don't get solved, and we don't say, oh well, let's stop making burglary illegal. So I think it would be fairly self-enforcing.
Thank you, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point has been well made around addressing Councillor Ortino's concerns that, those struggling with addiction, these charities would be consulted during any survey. And actually, aren't we trying to create a more supportive environment for those who are dealing with addiction, rather than say, okay, let's allow them to still be addicted? If we're creating an environment where there is a culture change, which means that there's less temptation to smoke because you can't do it in certain environments, then maybe that would be helpful. But yeah, we can seek the views in the consultation. In terms of the enforcement question, I mean, one thing is we do get a licence fee to enforce the conditions on people's licences already. So yes, it's just going to be a different condition, but we're supposed to be enforcing the conditions already. I can't understand the fact that we would need a special enforcement agent just for this, because basically the fees that we get will grow with the number of license holders that we have proportionately, and they're also otherwise we're saying we're just not currently enforcing the conditions we have on existing license holders, which would be a shame because that's what we're supposed to do. So yeah, I think, the final point is, I do think we're trying to achieve cultural change for that health benefit, and that actually let's move forward. Let's not delay because of LGR, and let's ensure that we've done as much groundwork as we can, so that we progress this objective as quickly as possible so that any health harm is minimised for both future generations and those who are currently suffering from addiction to smoking. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Raymond now.
Thank you, Chair. I think got all the benefits of the health and stuff has been covered, but I just would like to point something out that the officers mentioned, that we've gone from, I think in 5 years, from 300 to 600 licenses. I think somebody mentioned that earlier. Anyway, we've gone up to 600. I think there was a big prompt in having these licenses, especially around the city centre for cafes and stuff.
Sorry, can I just correct you?
Yes.
104.
104.
With,
Okay.
with the opportunity
Substantially more,
to
anyways.
expand.
So sorry, I don't know why I wrote 600. I can't read my writing. Sorry. It's 104, not 600, but it's 104. Anyway, so they have been successful, and they're generally for cafes, and there's an encouragement to get those businesses back up again. However, since that time, lots of pubs and lots of restaurants and stuff now started serving stuff that the coffee shops used to serve. So you can't really tell. And while there's separate rules for their private gardens and stuff, are we encouraging something, expanded it, made it successful, and now we're going to hinder it? So I do get all the stuff about the health benefits, and I think it is enforceable over a period. I just wanted to highlight that as a potential conflict of what these licenses and what we supported them for. And I just wanted one more clarification. We talked about enforcement and the cost. Are these licenses, or the cost of enforcing, or the cost of the whole administration of these licenses, are they within that budget? So if you needed another officer, or the costs were increased, would the license fees go up? So the payment license is self-funding.
So yes is the answer to that question. But at the moment, they're not looking to put those fees up this year. That might change in years to come.
So if we was to, sorry if I carry on.
Yes, carry on.
Yeah, so I just wanted clarification on that. So therefore, if we had to have more enforcement, we might deter people having these payment licenses, which we all think is quite successful, because the fees would increase again, because we would have to we would need more money to fund the extra enforcement, taking on board what Councillor Miles said. The fees at the moment cover what we need to cover at the moment, but if we had to do additional work, then the fees would go up, and maybe that'd be difficult for cafes as well to substantiate.
Thank you, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think my point is that for every pavement licence applicant, they each individually pay a fee, which covers the enforcement. And so the more licence holders there are, the more fees that you get, and that fee covers the enforcement of their activity. So it shouldn't, if you get more licence holders, yes, there are more pavement licences to enforce and conditions to enforce, but your income also is increasing per increased licence holders. So just to clarify.
Okay, Councillor Raymond, and then I will like to make a comment, then Councillor Ligo, and then I think we will come to a vote.
Yeah, just to respond to that, my point was, if you have 10 conditions, it takes 10 hours. And for example, if you had 12 conditions, it would take more officer time. So therefore, more conditions would possibly lead to more time being spent and more money. I agree with the health benefits. I just wanted to highlight the process that we had of having successful licenses for payment licenses. And now if we make it unequal towards pubs and places that have private areas where people can smoke, I didn't want to sort of take away from the success that we've had. I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. Councillor Ligo.
What people have said. I was just looking at the challenges on 20 as well, but it does say 20.c that must be applied universally, but beer gardens and other areas to which pavement licensing does apply will not be, doesn't apply and will not be affected by it, and smoking can continue. This may generate a perception of unfairness and confusion and inequality between businesses who don't have outside areas on private land. My only thing that I'm a little bit disappointed on this is there should have been, sorry for any disrespect, but a little more consultation, which we said beforehand, and I would like to have seen more and to debate more about that. But I understand all the points people have made, like James and a few other people and Simon. I think the balance goes to, we should be looking towards smoke-free. And then looking forward about what we do on the consultation, making sure the consultation is right and not rushed and it's done as well, making sure we have the right organisations. Businesses have to be at the heart of this as well, but also our next generation of people as well. And there are some people who, if they want a cigarette, you know, can have before or after when they go to these various sort of licensed premises as well. So I think the balance is that we have to look forward and encourage for a smoke-free. We've signed up for it as a city council many years ago, and the county council have done this as well. We're making the right steps as well, but I just want to ensure that we get the consultation correct with those that Simon alluded to, with those with other mental health conditions and addictions, and the businesses as well.
Thank you. And I'm going to allow Councillor Upton, you very short point.
Very short. So I understand we won't have the budget for enforcing it, but do officers think you've got the resource just to actually write this bit of legislation?
Maybe. It will be a lot of work, and we don't have a lot of free time. So, and I like to have a can-do attitude, so I'd say we probably could, but I think it will actually be very tight, and we wouldn't have capacity to deal with anything that came up, which was the unexpected. An enforcement case in some other area of work would wipe that out probably. So.
Okay, thank you. And taking my chair hat off for a moment and just commenting as a committee member, I'm very much in favour of smoke-free cafes. As a daughter of a very serious heavy smoker who I watched die from lung cancer, which is not a way you want to die, and as somebody who then has had to put up with passive smoking and all the damage that that does, and I still find it really, really difficult to be in a cafe where there is somebody smoking next to me and I have to breathe in their smoke. So just from a personal perspective, I'm very much in favour. Right, I'm going to draw the discussion to a close. I just have one question for our legal team, which is the thing we're actually voting on here is a recommendation to agree to keep the existing arrangements. So if we want to go further than that and actually say that we would like officers to take a course of action such as draft some legislation and begin a consultation, can we do that? Do we vote on this first and then do that? So Councillor Ligo, I'll just have if you've got a
I'm
question.
sorry, I just want to make a point. So Oxford City Council said we'll be smoke-free. Part of that being smoke-free, we said we would have no smoking outside our buildings, but outside this town hall, that we've got 3 bins with ashtrays that I've been trying to get removed for many, many years. No, I'm being serious. You will say, oh, we're a smoke-free city. And then, you know, outside, we did agree, part of being smoke-free, that outside our leisure centres, outside our community centres, outside any office buildings, that they wouldn't be there. I'm just hoping somewhere that we note that somehow. I know it's separate to this, but we don't want.
Thank you. Understood. I'm not sure that we can make a decision about that here at this committee, but I do think it's something we should.
Many times at different
I agree with
committees,
you. It's
but okay.
something we should be doing. Okay, so I'm going to ask legal for some advice.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Actually, Jonathan and I did have a little consultation that he prefers to answer, if that's okay with you.
Thank you.
So members, within the recommendation, it mentions the reasonings why the recommendation is to keep a smoke-free pavement licensing condition, which includes LGR enforcement, significant enforcement and resources pressures. If members wanted to tack on another recommendation of a consultation, I would advise that you amend that recommendation to take out everything from a full smoke-free pavement licensing condition, because I believe that would contradict with your request for a consultation from officers.
Ask the clarification.
Yes, Councillor Taylor.
If we were to, as a committee, vote for consultation, would we then, after that consultation, be then able to vote again on whether or not we wanted to pass the actual legislation into law?
So what you'd be asking for is officers to have a consultation and then bring the evidence back to committee.
Yeah, I'm asking whether that would be the case.
That can be sorted, obviously, if licensing officers are able to sort out consultation and then bring it back to committee.
Okay, councillor Miles.
On the basis of the officer advice that you just had, I'd like to put forward the recommendation and ask for a seconder, which is to agree to retain the existing arrangements with regards to smoke-free pavement licensing conditions and request officers to undertake a consultation survey on a proposed 100% smoke-free pavement licence condition.
Okay, do I have councillor Ligo? What? Yeah.
Before we second that, and I was going to say something similar, but do you want to take out 100%? Because if we can't do the 100%, just the terminology around what you just said, that was all.
So with the recommendation I've put forward for the survey, my understanding is that the survey results will be brought back to the committee at a future stage for us then to vote on the basis of the survey results, but that the survey would be asking for views of all different stakeholders and whether they support 100% smoke-free pavement licence.
Okay, does that answer your question? I think councillor Raymond had a point.
Yeah, I think councillor Miles just said it in the last embers, to make sure in that consultation all the businesses, all parties are included.
Okay, so I think, councillor Upton. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a proposal and we have a seconder. So can I see everyone in favour of that proposal? And against? And any abstentions? Lovely, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, officers, and thank you, committee members. Great. Okay, we will move on.
Sorry, Chair. Like I alluded to earlier, I know we finished this because you haven't ended it, but I did want some clarity about the answers about the smoking bins outside. Because if some people, because if some people say that no, Oxford City Council banned licences from doing it, but they've allowed their own buildings to, just because I've phrased this for years.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Can I ask officers, is that something we can make any decisions here about?
We don't commission those licenses.
Can I put, I don't know, can the general licensing team, can I put them on the spot? Is it something you could take forward in any way? The situation with the bins outside the town hall?
The bins.
Ashtrays.
Through you, Chair, I think that's beyond our scope. I think it might be a matter for ODS, I think, if they provide the bins.
Councillor Ligo, I suggest that we have a cross-party motion at the next full council to such. Let's do that. Okay, thank you. Right, that was item 6. We are now moving on to item 7, miscellaneous licensing fees and charges for the financial year 26 to 27. So officers, I prevail upon you to give us a report again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Just point 1, introduction and background. The purpose of this report is to seek agreement to the licensing fees and charges that should apply for 2026-2027 for activities where the council has discretion. This report does not cover fees for licensing and Gambling Act activities, which are reported separately to the Licensing and Gambling Acts Committee. The fees and charges detailed within this report are found at Appendix 1 and relate solely to the functions of the Business Regulation Team. A further report will be provided to members in relation to the fees and charges related to the functions of the General Licensing Team. The statutory principle in relation to the setting of the fees is that they should be reasonable, proportionate, and not exceed the cost of the procedures and formalities of the relevant licensing scheme, including staffing, training, administration, testing, inspections, hearings, and regulation. The licence fees set by the council and administered in the miscellaneous licensing function within the Business Regulation Team comprise the following: acupuncture, ear piercing, electrolysis, tattooing, animal boarding, dangerous wild animals, dog breeding, pavement cafes, pet shops, exhibiting animals, riding establishments, street trading, and zoos. Members are asked to note that the fees have been revised and increased, applied in line with the department to cover the authority's costs in line with inflationary pressures. that is the Planning and Regulation Department. The council is responsible for collecting licence fees for these functions and predict income from licence fees is included in the council's budget estimates for 26-27.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Councillor Attino and then Councillor Upton.
And these all, they're about 10%, so that's above inflation. So how are they reasonable?
Well, in response, I've done some quick maths. I was here last year and you asked the same question. It's reduced from last year, where the ask was, I think, 9.8. Sorry, I'm just bringing up my notes here. Was 9.8. This year it's 9.4. I've gone back 5 years, and because we were very prudent in the first few years of the decade, we were well below inflation in increasing our prices. So if you average it over the 5 years, it's currently would be 6% against an inflation rate of an average of 5%. So we're 1% above inflation over those 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Upton.
It's a trivial question really, but I just wondered, does anybody have a dangerous wild animal licence?
No comment.
Over to you, Matt.
Currently, slightly unbelievably, we haven't got any dangerous wild animals licensed. We have had them licensed. It must have died, but it's
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Attino.
I mean, yeah, what would be the impact on the budget of making these just 5% increases instead of 10? Is it a huge amount? I mean, given that nobody has got some of these licenses, how much money is actually raised from this, will be raised from this increase? And would it make that much a difference to, it might make a difference to the people applying for the licenses. How much a difference would it make to us if it was only like about 5%?
So on the periphery, obviously some of these charges we don't have licenses for, but we're looking at inner city street trading charges as the major impact for this. We've based this on the fact that we have, over the last 5 years, 34 to 38 static traders. On that figure, it hasn't really moved up or down. We've managed to remove any sort of debt following COVID. We implemented a lot of repayment plans between COVID and probably 2 years ago. They are all now paid off. We haven't had feedback from our traders directly in respect of how much they're paying. It's very difficult for us to compare our prices across the nation or other councils because they have completely different setups and different ways of setting the charges. But from that feedback that we have no debt repayment, our traders continue to renew every year. They are trading in Oxford, which is, has that reputation. And also obviously the customer base. So bearing all that in mind, I think it's not onerous.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Mundy.
So, the City Farm in Cowley, is that counted as a zoo for the purposes of miscellaneous licensing, or is it under the trade? Is the keeping animals for exhibition? I'm not quite sure.
well, I hope not, because they're not licensed. Let me make a note of that. As an aside, so what was the address? As an aside, though, this is a good example, an illustrative example, if you like, of the benefit of enforcement. One of the things that we struggle to do is to get out there and survey our districts and do the bit where we trail through adverts, we look through people trying to sell animals, people trying to attract people to see their animals, that kind of thing, because there's a time cost to that. Now there's another time cost to actually going onto the place and them shutting the door in our face and us finding a way of opening that door. So it's, yes, they're not licensed. Possibly they should be if they're keeping animals overnight and exhibiting them. There are exemptions for farms, though. I've already forgotten what you said, but it's on YouTube.
Do we have any other questions before I open to debate?
Sorry, Chair, could I just make one point? We also receive a lot of inquiries on a weekly basis for people who want to trade in the city. So it's a substantial interest that if we did lose traders, that they would be quite easily replaced.
Thank you, that's useful information. Right, debate, any comments? No, I see none. No, going. Councillor Upton?
Yeah, just I think I propose that we accept the officer's recommendations on all of
Thank
these.
you. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Miles. Okay, all those in favour of accepting? Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, now we come to item 8. Thank you for those people in the public seating who've come for this, and I'm sorry you've had to wait quite so long. So officers, swap over. And officers, if I can ask you to present your report, but also take the opportunity to respond to the statement that was given in the public address at the beginning of the meeting, if that's possible. Thank you. We'll just wait one moment, I think, for Jonathan to return to his seat. Do you need to come back? Are you taking minutes? No, you're right. Okay. Okay, go ahead, officers.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek members' agreement on the general purposes licensing fees and charges for the 26-27 financial year. For commercial events and events with no commercial element, including street parties, these fees have increased approximately by 4.3% to cover the authority's costs due to inflationary pressures, and the proposed changes are detailed in Appendix 1 or page 32 of your bundle. For scrap metal licences, this is an executive function with the responsibility sitting with Cabinet. Therefore, the setting of these fees does not fall to this committee. The fees for these licences are, however, included for the report for the members to note and are found at Appendix 1 or page 31 of your bundle. For sex establishments and sexual entertainment venues, there are no proposed amendments to the fees and charges for these functions for the upcoming financial year. Details of the current fees are found at Appendix 1 or page 32 of your bundle. For the Hackney and private hire licensing, the fees have not increased for the upcoming financial year. The only amendments have been made to remove any outdated fees, and details of these are found in Appendix 1 or page 31 of your bundle. I will now continue to read a response from the licensing manager in relation to Mr. Khan's written and formal public address to you this evening. The authority acknowledges that there has been an increase in private hire driver and vehicle applications. The increase occurred within a period of less than 1 year following the launch of Uber as an operator in Oxford. It is too early to determine whether these increases are temporary or long-term, and the licensing team are monitoring the position very closely. To manage the increased volume of private hire applications, the authority has already taken steps to strengthen service capacity and meet the increased demand. This has included increased spending on processing and regulatory activity, additional officer levels, higher supplies and equipment costs and demand, as well as continued investment in the taxi service improvements. We are currently in the final stages of implementing the long-awaited taxi online payment system, which has required substantial officer time and financial investment, but this will significantly improve the efficiency for both the Hackney carriage and private hire trade. It is important to clarify that all licence fees are legally ring-fenced by licence type. Income for private hire licences can only be used to regulate the private hire sector. While that income is supporting the additional work generated by the rise in private hire applications, the Hackney carriage trade will still benefit greatly whenever improvements such as modernised processes and online payments are made available to all licence holders. Should private hire income continue to increase beyond what is required to deliver an efficient, modernised, safe and fully compliant service for a larger private hire fleet, then future fees and charges reviews would reflect that, including the possibility of reductions. At present, however, the increased number of applications are matched by the increased operational compliance and enforcement demands. The authority, however, will continue to monitor this situation. To illustrate, between the 1st of January 2025 and the 1st of January 2026, private hire driver numbers grew by 28% and private hire vehicles by 39%. During the same period, there have been significant increases in the following areas: increased subcommittee determinations, increased compliance and enforcement work, increased local knowledge and safeguarding tests, increased customer inquiries, as well as increased administrative workload. In terms of support for the Hackney carriage trade, the Council already provides a ULEV discount for Hackney carriage vehicles. This committee has also recognised the financial pressures facing drivers by delaying the requirement of all Hackney carriages to transition to ULEV vehicles, removing the requirement of financial investment which would have otherwise taken effect this year. Our environmental sustainability team continues to work to secure improved charging rates and arrangements for Hackney carriages, meaning drivers currently pay significantly less than private motorists when using the Blink charging point network. With regard to comparisons to South Oxfordshire District Council, their licensing scheme system even differs significantly. They do not cap Hackney carriage numbers and they license around 500 Hackney carriage vehicles in comparison to our 107. This spreads the cost across a much larger fleet. In addition, a significant number of those Hackney carriages operate non-traditionally, often working outside of their own district through private hire operators in other districts. This means their compliance needs, enforcement expectations and associated costs are very different from Oxford's model, where Hackney carriages operate predominantly within the city and serve the local public. For these reasons, direct fee comparisons are not applicable. The current fees and charges offer substantial discounts for private hire vehicle licences which are fully electric and not ultra-low emissions at 208 and wheelchair accessible vehicles at 130. This is only possible because the cost can be spread across a much larger number of private hire licences. The Hackney carriage fleet is capped at 107 vehicles, limiting the ability to absorb a larger discount. The ULEV discount for Hackney carriages could be increased, but only if the costs were offset by a proportionate increase in fees for non-ULEV Hackney carriages, which at this time is not considered appropriate. Considering our EVC component delays, we have contacted our test centre, Oxford Direct Services, for their views. At present, no such issues have been raised with the licensing team by drivers or trade representatives, and ODS have not identified any concerns that would affect our compliance testing arrangements. Despite inflationary pressures and the increased operational costs outlined in my statement, the licensing team is still recommending that no fee increases for this financial year in order to support the licensed trade. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your report and thank you for your very comprehensive response to Mr. Khan's public address. Thank you. So I'm going to open the floor to questions for officers. Councillor Ottino.
I might have just missed this in the report, but so why no increase for sex establishments and scrap metal dealers? Why is that not going out of inflation?
It's mainly because we don't see an increase of those. I've got some statistics for you. So in regards to sex establishment fees, we've only had one sex establishment premises in the city, and that's been since 2024. It was previously free in sex shops, and we had one sexual entertainment venue in the past, but at the moment, it presently is just for one sex shop on the Cowley Road. Scrap metal have dropped considerably. At one point, we had 45 scrap metal licenses, so that includes your collectors, your sites, and dealers. We currently have 4 at the moment, a handful of collectors and 2 site licenses, I believe, off the top of my head. So there's no increased workload to justify an increased fee.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rawle?
Thank you. I just wondered if there was any way we could get an understanding of what the previous increase in charges or difference in charges have been in previous years for taxi licensing, just roughly.
I don't think it details in the reports off the top of my head. Let me just bear with me. Yeah, so it just shows the 2025-26 charge. I wouldn't know what the percentage was for the last previous financial year.
There was an increase last year, fees and charges for taxis. I cannot remember what it is. It was around inflation, and at that time that was quite high. But this year there's nothing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Ottino again.
Yeah, so is this right again? The rationale for the private hire, say 1 year licence being less than the Hackney 1 year licence, is because they're all electric, the private hire. Is that the reason? But, or what is the reason? But there are advantages to the Hackney carriages, aren't there? Because they've got disabled access. So why is it slightly more expensive for a Hackney 1 year licence and a private 1 year licence, or other differences between private hire and Hackney?
Obviously, as stated in the statement by the licensing team manager, there is only a small fleet of Hackney carriages, so that's 107 fees to split between them, whereas there's a higher fleet of private hire vehicles. Private hire vehicle, ultra low emission, wheelchair accessible vehicles do have obviously a percentage knocked off, but that is because the other fees are able to absorb that discount as stated by the licensing team manager.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Raymond.
Yeah, about the electric vehicles and the issues around the MOTs or ODS, that will be separate from here today, but could we look into that? I've just, because of you made that comment from Coulter that if they are having issues, we should raise them. And obviously they're losing revenue by not being able to do that work properly.
Again, as stated by the licensing team manager, nothing has been brought to our attention until the statement was provided in writing to us and made in the public address today. We consulted with Oxford Direct Services, who have confirmed that they have not had any issues that resulted in compliance tests not being able to be completed on Hackney carriage vehicles, the ultra low emission versions.
Any further questions? Councillor Tino, do you want to come back?
I still don't understand, even just for the driver fee, it's more for a Hackney carriage than it is for a private hire. I don't understand why is it £15 more, or?
They also have the privilege of driving private hire vehicles on top of being able to drive Hackney carriages. So they do have the privilege of being able to drive two types of vehicle, do two types of work potentially. That's always been the way it's been since I've worked here, is that the privilege of having the Hackney carriage and driving the Hackney carriage vehicle has a slightly higher fee, but not anything we've looked into before.
Councillor Raymond?
Yeah, it's always been that way. Could it be a possibility that if somebody just wanted to be a Hackney carriage driver and lose that privilege and have the same price badge?
Yeah, we haven't done Hackney. There is an administrative element to this, but I can't give you the details now. We can come back to it. But there are components in issuing licenses that equate to the variation in our charges. So we have to assess what a fee would be based on the activity that the team do. But I can't give you the detail right now, unfortunately.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question. I see all of the fees have got no increase except for the road closures, which are set at a fairly low rate. But can you explain why there's an increase there?
So the increase in street parties, obviously they're becoming more and more popular. Obviously we had a massive upturn during the last Jubilee or where the coronation, that's the word I'm looking for. They are substantially low in comparison to the amount of workload that goes into it. For example, a street party application is a week's consultation with responsible persons, then the issuing of the closure, which then has to be sealed by legal and filed away and then sent out directly to the applicants. So there's a lot of work and a lot of material that does go into it, and it involves more than one team. So the fee is probably still not recouping potentially the workload or team that takes place.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions before we go into debate? Councillor Miles.
Just with the street closures, sometimes the signage is provided. Is that included then where the highway sign comes in, or is that separately paid for?
So depending on the availability, the highway closed or road closed sign can be rented from Oxford Direct Services, I assume at an additional fee. We don't have a set, you have to have this type of sign. I know for a fact yesterday I went past a road closure that was put in place. It was just done by cones. There was no actual road closed sign. It was the middle of the night and I didn't notice it until I was just about to turn off a junction. So there is no standard set way of advertising the road closed sign. I assume some members of the public could potentially use cones and just put a road closed A4 bit of paper if that's how they choose to do it, as long as it's signposted it's closed. However, ODS do have availability to rent them if someone wishes to do so at a separate fee to ours.
Any further comments? Oh, Councillor Raymond.
Yeah, so we've got over 1,000 private hires with Uber, and the officers have mentioned that the money raised through licence fees is ring fenced. So I think that's quite good that we'll be able to do more after all the stuff that officers already said. We're doing more enforcement because it's noticeable since Uber's been in the city, their stickers coming off the doors, they're parking all over the place. So I think it should be sort of reassurance to the chaps at the back that that money is going to be there to protect the overall trade. So yeah, so I think that we should hopefully see improvements with when officers and the council have more money to do more enforcement work, I think, which is what we've been talking about all night.
Just to put that into perspective, we do 2 operations a month at night, which is normally a Friday night and the occasional Saturday, depending on if there's an event on. They're split 50-50 between the Licensing Act 2003 and Gambling Act 2005, and then the taxi trade is another separate entity. We also do additional work for Thames Valley Police, road policing. We work with trading standards in regards to LA 2003. So we have programmed in 24 operations for the next financial year, 12 of which will be for taxi and private hire. However, if we're doing alcohol licensing and we step outside a pub and come across a private hire issue, we're not going to ignore it. We will still take that on and program that for the next working day. So yes, and then hopefully once our resources is fully up to speed, we'll be able to program in some daytime compliance inspection for both sides of the licensing regime.
Okay, do we have any more? Yes, Councillor Atina.
Go on, and if you drop the Hackney driver fees to the same as the private hire driver fees, would that be catastrophic on your department?
I wouldn't be able to answer that without knowing the budget numbers, Mr. Adams.
So that would be 107 times whatever the reduction is for activities related to the processing of Hackney drivers. So I would not want to commit to doing something like that, which could be quite significant. Yeah, I wouldn't want to make take that suggestion on now. There is a multiplier by the number of drivers that we're talking about. And there are other kind of fees and, sorry,
we licensed 314 Hackney and private hire drivers, so it'd be 314 times the amount.
Thank you. There's a specific figure, so 314 times the reduction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're in debate now, so any comments? Sorry, I've lost track. Were we already in debate or are we still in question? We were, yeah, thank you. Yes, so.
I was just going to suggest that we, through you, Chair, move this on. I propose that we go with the recommendations to approve Hackney carriage and private hire, road closure orders, scrap metal dealers, sex establishments, street parties and commercial events, licence fees, the charges 26 and 27.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Yes, thank you. Mary, okay, all those in favour? Yeah, that's unanimous. All those against? And abstaining. Are you abstaining? Yeah, we have one abstention. Okay. All right. That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, officers. Moving on swiftly, item 9, dates of future meetings. Just please note, it's the 27th of May at